right here. Yes, sì, click. I'd like to call Paris Kokorotsikos to join me on the stage, please, so we can resume our works. Paris Hilton, yeah. Well, as Paris will show up, because he's here already, I think we are almost ready to go. Good morning again. My name is Luis Sanz. I am the Director General of the International Association of Science Parks and Areas of Innovation. It's a worldwide association, already 30 years in the arena. We gather more than 400 science and technology park projects in 73 countries. We have the headquarters in Spain, branch office in Beijing, and next to gathering these over 400 parks, through these parks, we represent a community of circa 200,000 companies, overwhelmingly based on technology and innovation, because these are the type of companies that our parks aim at hosting. And I'm very pleased to be here. Buongiorno a tutti anche. Being here in Trieste is to me a little bit like coming back home, although I'm a Spaniard, but I've lived in Italy for many years. And I collaborated quite tightly with this particular project, as I was member of an advisory committee to the president and the director general of Area Science Park for a number of years. So it's always very nice to be here. We've been talking about innovation, creation of industry, economic development, all in the frame of the so-called global knowledge economy. And to make all that happen, to ensure that in our respective countries and cities and regions, we do indeed develop this type of companies and this type of economies, we need tools that are ad hoc to that purpose. There are a number of them. I represent science parks, areas of innovation, business incubators, these type of tools. And it is from that angle and from that perspective that we will try to talk about strategies for the 21st century, especially with an aim into the open innovation concept. But I have asked to be not only the moderator of this session, and I will be introducing my colleagues immediately after, but also to make a little presentation. And I'm going to try and provide Here we go. Try and provide a frame for the next presentations to have this frame, just as I said, in order to fit and make some meaningful sense to you all. This is a definition of science park that we often used at the ISP. I'm going to go very briefly through that because this is not an academic session, but I would like you to pay attention to the highlighted words because they are the key issues that to us define what a science or a technology park is, as opposed to other type of more traditional spaces for industry or companies. And in order to have a truly science or technology park, we need to have a very specialized management. We need to focus on innovation and increasing the competitiveness of the companies that are residing in those parks. Of course, to do that, we need a number of tools and also a very clear strategy. And we deal with the flow of knowledge, meaning that one of the core issues of every technology park or science parks is to make sure that there is a good flow of knowledge, wherever knowledge is produced, to wherever knowledge has to be applied. That is typically the case between universities and companies or the market, but not only. Universities are by far the main knowledge producer, but not the only one. Companies are producing their own knowledge too. In any case, let's not enter into the details, but parks are there, among other things, to make that flow happen. I'm going to skip this new definition of areas of innovation, which is a similar yet a different thing, because I don't think it's pertinent and we don't have that much time. Why do we have science parks, technology parks, and similar tools? Well, basically, and it's been somehow insinuated in the previous session, because what we call global knowledge economy means, in truth, new types of markets, new types of customers for companies, new types of companies, even new types of workers, the so-called knowledge workers, the creative class. It's a whole new brave world, and therefore we need also new types of spaces for all those things to happen dynamically and with better guarantees of success. Where do we work? How do we go about it? Where are the creative processes taking place? How can we ensure that companies, especially new startups, are receiving all this inflow, all these inputs to incorporate as part of the daily work all this type of innovation thinking, being alert of what competitors are doing, and even more than that, being alert of what collaboration opportunities are there for them to grow and to prosper. Keeping, of course, in mind that collaboration is no longer circumscribed to your narrow neighboring territory, but you have the whole world for that to happen. One thing that is probably pertinent in my case, talking about science and technology parks, is this. You see, despite our name, science parks, technology parks, we are truly not about science nor about technology. We are first and foremost about companies, about businesses, about entrepreneurs, about businessmen and the like. Of course, once we have determined that this is our main focus, we immediately realize that to do our job, that is to provide these companies with the optimal environment for them to prosper, we cannot do it unless we secure this access to knowledge, this flow of technology, etc., because it's not for nothing that we are in the knowledge technology. Knowledge is now the main asset of companies and even, I dare say, societies, and therefore we have to make sure that we are able to provide that. That has another message, has been often repeated, but I think it's always the case to repeat it again, because emphatically repeat it, because I think it's a condition sine qua non to prosper, is that our universities have to realize that precisely because knowledge is now the main asset, even for companies and economic development, there is no escape. They must actively get involved in economic development, thus adding this new layer of collaboration with companies to the traditional classical layers of researching and teaching. We have repeated this message over and over again. I think we are making, in the world in general, in Europe in particular, quite many progresses. When we look back and we see how our universities typically behaved 20, 30 years ago, and now it's a whole different panorama, but we still find a certain resistance in certain universities that perhaps are more traditional, perhaps are still anchored to the imprint of the theological origin that they have, where businesses is to be something polluting that has to be kept away from academic activity, but that is fortunately changing. Having said that, it is true that we have to demand from our universities this change of mentality and this participation, but it's only fair to say we have to provide them the tools to do that. Sometimes regulations have to be changed so that academic and researchers really find a stimuli to get into that activity, because they see that entering into collaboration schemes with companies rather than perhaps doing only paper writing in indexed magazines is not an obstacle for their academic career. This type of arrangements have to be ensured and provided. Very briefly, when we talk about business parks, those of you who may perhaps be planning this type of projects in your respective countries or cities, these are the main building blocks that you will have to deal with. And your job is a little bit to be a juggler and to mix all these things in the right amounts, in the right proportions, and in the right way. I have to go very briefly, but I'll try to cover them all. Management is central. It has to be full-time management, and it has to be specialized management. Now, the profile of the manager is very important. The composition of the board of directors is very important. And the only key word here is you have to be generous. Even if that project happens to be at the beginning, let's say the property or the main initiative of a government or of a university in some cases, you have to invite other key players to participate since day one, give them a word, give them a saying in this project. The institutional architecture of this project is crucial for their success. You have to collaborate with universities. It can happen in many ways. We have parks that are owned by the universities. Others collaborate actively with universities. You have to devise the right mechanisms for collaboration. It cannot be only that you invite the rector to sit at your board of directors and that's it. There has to be much more than that. There are many formulas. It's happening successfully in many ways. There is not one single formula for success. We are glad to share experiences of our vast network whenever we are required to do so. Of course, parks are not real estate operations. They have a real estate support. You have facilities to sell and most likely to rent, and you make money out of that and you reinvest that money. But your purpose is not real estate. You're there for something else. And that something else, which is securing a successful business community within the premises of the knowledge economy, requires some value-added services. Which ones? Nobody can say. It depends on the context, on the park. But of course, you know that I'm thinking about some basic issues, such like intellectual property consulting, management consulting, networking access to sophisticated lab equipment from the universities or wherever, and you name it, many others. Your facilities have to be of a quality level. That doesn't mean expending a lot of money. That means having a clear criteria in realizing that you are building facilities for people that will not content themselves with just typical traditional industrial settlements. So now we are in the wave of common working spaces, fab labs, etc., etc. Again, not a single formula. There are many. We have them in our network. We have all of them. We can certainly spread that knowledge. But one thing you must realize is that you have to define the type of infrastructures and facilities that you need only when you have defined what is your strategy. Which are the type of companies and sectors that you are planning to serve and to concentrate, because they may differ. New business creation and business attraction. There are two things that are important. Some parks focus on creating new companies via incubation processes, spin-off processes and the like. Their focus is startups. Others are more concentrated in attracting to the park already existing companies. The question is, if you attract an already existing company that is located elsewhere to your park, is it to do the same thing? If it is to do the same thing, what's the purpose? So you have to be adding some value and some incentive to these companies to say, I'm going to take advantage of locating in this type of environment to do something new. Network, this is really all about networking. And networking has to be handled professionally. Unfortunately, some people still think that networking is traveling around the world, exchanging business cards and drinking local beers if you happen to have some money free to spend at the end of the year. There is much more than that. I will give you just a clue of my thinking about how networking should be addressed. Treat it as if it were a marketing plan. You need to have yearly goals for your networking activity. What do I want to achieve this year with my networking activity? And you have to give yourself answers. If you have that, you will then act accordingly, and you will be able to measure the success of your networking activity just as you can measure your commercial activity on any other parameter that you have in your activity. And finally, territorial influence. And this is crucial. It's liaised with the notion of area of innovation I mentioned before. It's the time for abating the fences. We no longer need very specific places where techno ghettos where people will go to work at 8 in the morning and leave at 6 o'clock in the evening, and then nothing happens. The connections with other processes in the city, or in the region have to be there since day one. I think particularly this Area Science Park is a very clear example of a very successful way to do that. Your concern and your constituency is not only the resident companies that you happen to have in place. Your borders are much broader than that. You have to let your influence be felt by other broader community of businesses, even if they are not your clients in terms of paying a rent, but they may be your client and your users in terms of belonging to that community, using the services and helping to spread the message. And another vision of that, whenever you plan a science park, you have to be careful not to forget a number of decisions that need to be made before launching the park. This is a very simplified scheme of a software-based analytical tool that I devised and now is being widely used among many members of the association. Those 7 strategic axes need responses. You have to define whether your park is to be located in an urban area or non-urban area, but by that I'm not only talking about geography. That's very easy. I'm talking about many implications that go nearby. If you talk about an urban park, you may not be at the core of the city, but you have urban density because you have perhaps spaces for people to do more things than just working. Perhaps living, perhaps leisuring activities, perhaps educational activities. So the more these not only working activities you add, the higher the urban density of the project you have. What is your main focus in the technology stream, in the flow of knowledge? Are you mostly working with universities? And that's your main target. But to help the research results and the knowledge of university go down to the marketplace, then you are upstream. Are you mostly working with the marketplace, with companies that those are your main, let's say, users and partners, but with the idea of making sure that they have access to the knowledge generated upstream? It's actually the same job from 2 different angles. And that implies different tactics, different services, but at the end, the goal is common. Perhaps this accounts for the difference of terminology. Those I have checked all throughout the world, and it just so happens that parks that strategically are upstream are typically referred to as science parks. Parks that are typically located in the downstream part of this axis are typically located technology parks. But they do the same job, only from different angles. You need to define it, though. You need to know where you stand at the beginning before you actually begin to invest money in building it up. Are you focusing on the creation of new technology-based companies, startups, incubation, etc., or are you more focusing on mature firms, or both? In what proportion, in what degree? That also needs to be answered before you launch your activities, because that will determine type of services, type of facilities, even the type of management team that you need in place. Are you going to be specialized in some technological sector and just in a couple of them? Are you going to be more generalist and say, well, as long as companies have a degree of innovation, they are okay in my park, no matter whether they are in the biotech or aeronautics or whatever? That's another important decision with many consequences. Are you mostly focusing on your local companies and your local market? Or do you have a more international vocation, as, for example, the technology park in Singapore, to mention just one very significant example? Or, of course, you want to tackle both, but you have to determine in what proportion. That's another decision that needs to be made. How strategically are you going to incorporate networking activities in your overall business plans? That's another issue. And then the management model. Is it more institutional-minded? Is it more market-driven? And I'm not talking only about ownership. That's the least of it. I'm talking more about actually the management model, the composition of the board of directors, the profile of the CEO. Where he comes from is very important. You will not have the same park if the CEO is a professor or a civil servant or somebody from the private sector. Maybe they can all do a good job. I personally doubt it. I think that to serve companies and to promote companies and to secure their success, we would probably be better off securing the right profile anyway. What competences will he have? Enough competences to manage and take flexible decisions quickly, or shall we have to go through all the typical public administration processes that just to decide whether we buy 12 chairs for a new room may take 2 months? That's another issue that we have to be careful when we organize all our governance and our model. So as you can see, there is a lot of issues that have to be taken into account. But if you do that job right, and we are here to help, you can have the certainty that by creating this type of initiatives, you are developing very powerful economic development tools, particularly within the frame of the knowledge economy, which is what we all have to do now. I wanted to provide these main elements. I conclude here, and I'm now, there will be questions and answers before. I hope that I made some sense out of all my chatting. And I'm going to invite our next speaker, which is a good colleague, Josep Piqué. He represents La Salle Tecnova in Barcelona, and by the way, he has just been elected the new president of our association at our recent World Conference in Moscow. So this is actually his first act as president of ISP. Let's give him a big hand for this election. And he has a lot of experience, which he is going to share with you right now. Josep.
Okay, the organizers sent a clear message about the number of slides that we had to provide to you. But let me tell you that I decided to change the rule. Perhaps I am the president, but in any case, it's not about that. It's about...
you are the president, but I have the watch, and I...
The reason why that they changed it was because I was talking just with Laura, a person here on the stage, and really I decided to include some slides in order to help more about open innovation in Science Park. That's the real goal of my presentation. And the reason why I wanted to include these slides, it was because, our challenge as Science Park managers, and at the end of the day, as managers of ecosystems of innovation, is to be sure that our companies inside our parks or around our parks are making innovation. And innovation, as you know, is a clear message in order to transform our organizations, our companies, because they develop a new process of commercialization, new process of production, or perhaps they define a new product, or more than that, they find a new concept. But all of that, until now, was doing internally, or they don't know how to manage the relationship with the ecosystem in an effective way. And sometimes they don't know because there is a key word in the theory of innovation is absorptive capacity. Is how a small and medium company can adopt innovation if they don't have enough resources in terms of talent, if they don't have enough technology in terms of the capability to develop new productivity, because at the end of the day, remember that productivity means talent and technology. Talent and technology. If we use everybody Microsoft, it means that we have the same technology and we have to improve the quality and the profile and the skills of our people. If we want to develop a competitive advantage, we have to increase our technologies in order to combine talent and technology in order to develop the best of our products and services. But if we agree that internal innovation means that we can do some kind of innovation that is not just a disruptive innovation, it's incremental innovation, that is not bad. It means you can find inside and in dialogue with some customers or providers new ideas. But something is happening when open innovation tells us that the research and development department of our companies is the world. It's not just our internal department of research and development. It's the world, my department. But the world is your department, but your competition, your competitor, is using the same department, the world. More than that, we are sharing this global innovation system. We're sharing this world as a capability to take advantage of all the science that all the researchers are doing in the world, or the technology that we can really take advantage. But at the end of the day, how can we take advantage of all this science and technology to put inside our products and services in order to compete in the world? This is like a global play, but we play locally. And this is perhaps one of the challenges that we have in our science part, and we're working in our new strategic plan, in order to be sure that our local ecosystems are connected to the global innovation ecosystems. And this is like a change in the role of our parks and also the role of our ecosystems. We are not playing local, we're playing global. But the role of our local ecosystems is to be sure that we're well connected. In this way, if we agree that open innovation is the way to adapt, take advantage of technologies that we have inside or outside, we have to define how can we have the relationship with the environment, with our ecosystems, local and global, to be sure that our companies are developing the best in terms of innovation. And that's the slides that I am including in the last moment, because this is a very interesting toolkit coming from Berkeley, from Jerry Engel. It's a professor at UC Berkeley, and he was developing this toolkit for open innovation that is trying to understand that sometimes, and you know, all the companies are here. We have our own research that is developing the process and technologies that we need in our core as a company. But how can we connect in the best way to the external technologies that we can take advantage from universities or other ecosystems? But also, look at that, he's including other possibilities. Sometimes we have, as a company, some assets and technologies that we are not using more than for our focus on our innovation. Remember that when Xerox were developing PARC, Palo Alto Research Center in Silicon Valley, they were developing the mouse, they were developing the Windows, but as Xerox was making copies, they were not using the Windows and the mouse because they were creating new technologies, but as the model behind that was that they were only focusing in the market of the copies, they were not using for developing new markets. And that's when we find a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of the technologies of our companies to develop new applications. It means open innovation is not just how can I absorb, also how can I put my capabilities in connection with the markets, and also how can I connect better with ecosystems. For this reason, wow, it means that this is about a new approach of companies, because it's not only about internal development, it's how can I make acquisitions of companies or acquisitions of technologies, but also how can I create an ecosystem around our companies, transforming our companies as an incubators of new businesses. And this is incredible. This is a new message. It means that we can create new companies around the companies that we have. But are we ready for that? How can we help in the parts and areas of innovation this transition between an internal company and external company? And more than that, how can we take advantage of the big corporations as a real elevators of our startups and companies to sell directly to the world? Because sometimes a startup is starting, but they cannot sell in 40 countries or 50 countries. And sometimes we have in our environment companies that they are selling until now in 50 countries. It means that it's very easy for the big corporations to include a new product in the portfolio and sell to the world. This is the best between new companies and big companies. For this reason, we can really help in the science part. How can we create business units, but also how can we connect the big corporations with the technological centers and also scouting new opportunities, but also creating these corporate entrepreneurship platforms. At the end of the day, how can we help the companies to create new companies? But believe me that one of the things that Europe can do very well, because the strategy of Silicon Valley is wonderful, but we have the industry of venture capital like in Silicon Valley. But we can take advantage of the corporate venturing. Corporate venturing means the money that is coming from the big corporation that is investing in the new technology-based companies. And we have the experience in Spain, Telefonica, Repsol, and different big corporations. They are creating big corporate venturing funds. It means that they are investing in new startups, they are investing in the ecosystem. And it can help us for this development. Okay, this is the gift, and let me go just for the clear presentation about how can we create these ecosystems in order to be sure that we take advantage of all the three elements of the triple helix plus the real focus of the innovation. That is the demand side, the challenge. If you don't know what you need, please don't start to innovate. It means that every company has to define a clear agenda of innovation, a clear agenda of challenges. And what means a clear agenda of challenges? Challenges means you have a problem, I have problems of pollution, I have problems of productivity, I have a problem, or I have an opportunity. My customer in this moment is the population or the customer, they have a mobile in their hands, and perhaps I cannot use this technology to have a feedback with my customer. What I mean is that sometimes challenges are not problems. Challenges are opportunities. Opportunities, at the end of the day, are coming usually from the new technologies. And one of the key roles of the science parks and areas of innovation is to provide and to alert our companies that new technologies are knocking the door. Augmented reality, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, whatever new technologies are in this moment on the table. That's the reason why that if the government is allowing us to make innovation, it's not just to pay, to allow. If, for instance, now in Spain we cannot manage drones because they don't like drones around our country. But it means that we will not develop innovation in drones because if we cannot play, we will not learn. If we cannot put in our cities self-driving cars because it's not allowed, it means that we cannot do innovation on that. Nebraska is allowing to put any car in the streets of Nebraska with no problem. Regulation allows innovation. Universities has to focus on the real challenges, and also the industry at the end of the day is the key part of this ecosystem of innovation to leverage these opportunities. In this way, and I go to the last part of my, and the key message of my presentation. We were working a lot on that, and we discovered that at the end of the day, we need this discovery process. How can we help the companies to connect the challenges with the solutions? That's the reason why we were writing with Luis Sanz a document. It's a guide, it's a toolkit for open innovation that we're writing with the Joint Research Center in order to understand what is the process that we can provide to our ecosystem to connect the challenge with the solutions. In this way, the starting point is in a clear way the challenges. How can we knock the door of the corporations that we have around our ecosystem to understand and to ask them what challenges they have? Because if we know what they need, we can call the world. And this is perhaps a change of the scale. It's not just solving in a local way what they need, it's taking advantage of the global innovation system. That's the reason why we use the 400 science part of the world in order to look for what entrepreneur, what research center, what technological center can really make some kind of solution for that. If we know who can make the solution, we can select in appropriate way, and at the end of the day, to make a pilot. Pilot for us is a clear message that is not only about technology, it's about how can we find a clear product with clear customers at the end of the day in relation with this new proposal. Pilot means that is the acid test is at the end of the day is how can we find that we are doing innovation because we're connecting this innovation with this reality. But pilots is the starting point to go global. It means we transform our ecosystems as a global platform for developing pilots, check the feasibility, and after that go global with the scalability of our solutions. For this reason, I want to show you these two slides in order to understand that if we know what we need, this is a very good starting point. For instance, we were making an open innovation marketplace last week in Moscow. The city of Moscow was explaining to ISP, okay, we have problems of mobility, we have problems of pollution, we have clear problems. We're making a global call for the 400 Science Park. We received more than 500 applications 500 proposals. We were selecting the best 50 solutions, and we were bringing the 50 solutions to Moscow. Now, after this travel, the companies that we were bringing to Moscow, they were making dialogues with the city of Moscow, and they were choosing 10 pilots. Now Moscow is ready to do innovation, because as they were starting with the clear challenges, now they will have the opportunity to develop the pilot. If we know the pilots, we know that we can check not just that the technological feasibility, it's also the business model, it's also to validate the scalability. It means that if this side of the innovation means to attract the innovators to our challenges, the second part is we have to be ready to growth. We have to be ready to help the entrepreneurs, to help the companies to scale locally, but also globally. And that's when we change our role. We are global platforms, not just local platforms. If you want to download the toolkit for open innovation, we have the guide. This is a QR. You can make the photo, you can download, and whatever you need, I will be here for questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Josep. The next speaker comes from Greece, but that is too much smaller scale because he actually operates globally. And he's a specialist in the Gulf area, the Middle East, but also in the Balkans and the new area somehow. Paris Kokorotsikos is the CEO of a big consulting company, Euro Consultants, a member of ISP, one of our experts, and he's going to share some of his experiences with you. Paris?
Good day. My presentation is how a small science park inaugurated in 1992 by DG Regio Commissioner Milan accomplished its goals in additionality and really created and changed the environment of R&D, innovation and entrepreneurship in the region of Central Macedonia. This is a 25 years history, and this was coupled also by the crisis. So we had the last 6 years, and we can show that the crisis has boosted innovation. This was a research that we carried in the region for the impact of crisis on innovation initiatives and outputs. Throughout this period, IASP was from the A to Z present in this growth of a small STP into an innovation zone, and it was close to the transferring the know-how from all the best examples from science parks in the world. Euro Consultancy is actually a spin-off of the chemical engineering department 25 years ago. The researchers created a technology management company, and now it's in the stock market. It owns its own incubator, seed capital fund, and has invested in numerous startups. Some definitions. Innovation zone is becoming more important as a terminology lately. This I have quoted here is just a description. It's quite bigger than a science park. It's usually an area which includes several other nucleuses, such as science parks, incubators, research centers, and so on. And mainly, innovation zones were created as a consequence of market forces because new initiatives could not be included in the congested or the predefined space of the science park that was planned 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. Now we have a new definition that we voted last week in Moscow, so this is an older slide. Open innovation, there are many definitions by MIT, by UNESCO. There are links between the innovation zones and science parks and the open innovation. effective complementary to open innovation models by using several tools like triple or quadruple or more helix partnerships, technopoles, clusters, open labs, technology clinics, and various other forms of networking. In our case, we started with a very small science park in 1992, 10,000 square meters with 50 researchers and one small incubator. Fortunately, in a land of 3 square kilometers that belonged to an American farming school and the agricultural research laboratories, which had plenty of space out of Thessaloniki. Gradually, it started growing by creating the CERT, the Center for Research and Technology Hellas, which is now one of the biggest institutes of Greece, and it's the 13th in the ranking in successes in Horizon 2020. We research in chemical engineering, agro-bio, transport, ICT, biomedical, with 750 researchers providing applied research and contracted research services to multinationals and creating a lot of spin-offs. Then the private sector, especially the ICT sector, decided to grow its own ICT park next to the technology park. So they created 70 companies together with the universities, and the regional government created the ICT park with about 7 hectares. There are already 10 companies that have been established there with 350 employees. Several incubators, innovation incubators, 4 of them were created in the region with 100 tenants and 500 startups. We'll talk about concrete examples later. And all this evolved into an innovation zone, including science museums, other universities, and so on. This was the linear, let's say, growth of things according to the business as usual model and according to the gradual growth model of science parks worldwide. One of our incubators is our own incubator. The science park and the innovation zone, which are in the middle of this development, were responsible for catalyzing the regional open innovation ecosystem. Several regional pre-incubators were started creating within the universities and are under creation by chambers of commerce, because it was evident that the entry of the funnel is, the biggest is the output of successful companies. So the Science and Technology Park was the initial catalyst for the development of the ecosystem, but then everything started growing around it and connected with it. The fact that in the triple helix model, the Association of Industries was partner in the Science Park Management Company, also engaged the big companies with also concrete results. Some examples, what they created practically in the region, like Beta Kai Systems, a spin-off of the mechanical engineering department. A country, Greece, not producing cars, is having a design company for finite elements and is employing 250, and now coming to the employment issue, mechanical engineers designing cars for Opel, for BMW. All the Gabriel systems of the BMW models are designed there. Finite element crashes systems, and so on and so on. Exothermia, it's all the German and the Japanese car industries are using the softwares of exothermia for designing the catalysts of their cars. Again, a spin-off of thermodynamics department employing 35 postgraduates in mechanical engineering, and so on and so on. We could go with more examples like this. The fact is that the technology park and the ecosystem and the because most of these companies are coming out of the university environment. Some of them have graduated already to the US. We have created a link with Austin Accelerator and Spooks platform for open universities now moved to Austin, creating platforms for multinational franchises. But also the big companies have been involved into this game of R&D, participation in the regional R&D schemes and the creation of innovative products. And one of them, Aluminum, one of the top frame companies, has won, and I will show you later on a very interesting example, the Google Building Competition in New York. Kliman producing 2% of the elevators worldwide, and so on. I see here that they have put the first version of my presentation, not the new one. Okay, cannot find it. I had some results. We did the research in the last 5 years, and we have found that the crisis has really created change in the rate of creation of enterprises. And one of the major, yes, okay, I found it. Sorry for that. So the crisis, which was responsible for a reduction of GDP of 25%. That was the harshest GDP drop since the Second World War. We lost 25% of our GDP during the Second World War. Other countries like Spain or Portugal, they lost 4 or 6%, and created an unemployment of 27% in the peak of the crisis, was responsible for a brain drain of 200,000 young graduates, mainly to US, to Germany and United Kingdom, and less to the US. This outflow really created a serious problem, but on the same time, we saw that there was a big growth of the ecosystem
process of work movement. In the classic industrial economy, the typical pattern was an industry would decide where to locate a new big plant or whatever it is they make based on many issues, but none of them was based on workforce. The issues were proximity to raw materials or a good strategic proximity to a good nodes of communication, a harbor, an airport, railroad station, etc. All those issues, fiscal facility, fiscal climate, etc. Once the industry decided where to locate, the workforce had no option but to follow. Right? This is beginning to be exactly the opposite right now. The main asset, as I mentioned before, for companies is talent, is knowledge. So now, these talented knowledge workers decide where they want to live and work, and it's knowledge-based companies that have to follow them. Knowledge companies nowadays are following workers and not the other way around. So to make sure that whatever you launch is successful, you have to make sure that it's not only attractive for companies per se, but for people. You need to create spaces that will attract this type of people. And you don't do it by creating a space who's only conceived to go early in the morning, switch on the light, do your job, and then switch off the light and disappear. This is no longer appealing. And that's why urban downtown areas are beginning to be very attractive for this type of people. And parks have to adapt to that and maybe even leading that by inventing completely new type of approaches. But you need to know all that beforehand. You cannot simply go and copy the parks that we were building in the 80s. Because the park that we were building in the 80s, two things are happening. Those who succeed is because they are evolving and adding and incorporating elements that raise their so-called urban density in these terms I mentioned. The other ones are going down the drain. It's not a secret that some projects do not survive time. I mean, you know, we have companies that succeed and companies that disappear, and we have governments that do well and governments that do bad and lose the elections, if there are elections in place, and that's not a universal feature, let's face it now. Maybe universities are a little exception here. I'm going to be provocative, but universities, for some unknown reason, seem to be blessed with, you know, it's a university who have to keep providing public money regardless of their results. Whether they are excellent or mediocre, well, we have to keep them in place. Well, they're lucky. But things might change. And by the way, one of the things that I contend, and I'm going now to give the word to the floor, is that among other things, science and technology parks are very, very good tools for universities to survive and to be more competitive. They need channels, knowledgeable channels, to get in touch with the marketplace and to generate income selling research results to companies and to reinvest that income in better education and better research, etc., etc. And very often academics, and that's not to blame them, it's not supposed to be like that, they're not good at that particular job. They need conveyors, they need translators. I have often been in meetings with academic people, very brilliant, and businessmen, very clever. And they were talking, and I knew they were talking about the same thing, and they didn't understand each other. They really needed an interpreter, and not a language interpreter, a concept interpreter. Well, and that's part of the job that science and technology parks do. So with that, I would say, are there any direct questions or any remarks that you would like to make about what you heard? Please, can you introduce yourself, get the microphone, fight for it?
Hello, I'm Cristina Marullo from Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna as a university in Italy, in Pisa. I like the discussion about the parks we were building in the 80s and the parks we are building now. I wanted to know, some years after the Silicon Valley development as a result of spin-outs process from large companies, new technology-based firms emerged in Europe. Development at regional level, with the role of universities, science parks were born. This model seems to work also even during crisis. But after that, the shift from the closed science to the open science in the world, in the knowledge economy, the shift from the open science to open innovation, so collaborations among universities and other actors, produced also an increased centrality of universities as knowledge hubs in the world. Pre-industrial knowledge hubs, talent factories. So the question is, the model in the US, UC Berkeley, the MIT, is that of large companies, CEOs, driving university laboratories, serving as rectors in the universities, and so on. How do you situate with respect to this model in the new parks you are building now? How to keep large industrial firms involved in this process, not only through corporate venturing, but making their ecosystem overlap with yours? Thank you.
È una questione aperta a chiunque di noi o a uno di noi? A me. To me. Yeah, well, let me pass it on to Giuseppe first, because I want to fine-tune my wording before answering.
No. But in any case, thank you for the questions, because you talk about UC Berkeley. Do you know the National Science Foundation? They invest every year hundreds and thousands of millions of dollars in the research labs in America and USA. But it's about 3 or 4 years ago, they decided to put only the 1% of the budget, or big budget, in transfer, in innovation. And the way that they were doing that was taking advantage of the knowledge of Steve Blank and Jerry Engel, the professor Jerry Engel for Berkeley. They were creating the program I-Corps. The program I-Corps is a very clever program. It's talking about customers. It's talking about hypotheses. It's talking about that you are a researcher and you think that perhaps some customer will apply this. And what they do in 10 weeks is to transfer the idea in a prototype. Remember my keyword, pilots. We don't want science. We want pilots. We want realities. We want interactions between customers and our technology embedded in a product or service. The secret of this program is a 10 weeks program. It's very, very easy. They do in all the country now. Is that they ask the scientific entrepreneurs to have 100 interviews, 100 dialogues with customers. That's the key word. Please connect your idea with the reality, because it's not just about the value. It's about, you will pay for that? What do you pay? You want to pay $1 every month, or you want to pay $1,000 and you will have the product? It's about how can you, how will you will buy that? You will buy because I will deliver to you, or you have a provider, I will put my product in your provider. This is about the lessons, about the journey between the science and technology to the real pilot with the real customer. In this idea, I feel, trying to answer your question, is that also the corporations, they have the big, wonderful opportunity coming back from the demand side. One thing is when you have a technology push, you have technology, you have to discover how to reach, is from the demand side to send clear challenges to the world. Because if you send global challenges, you will listen things that you were, yes, planning to listen, but sometimes the disruptive innovation were coming from people that you were not expected. And let me just take advantage of an example of one of the projects. Before my life at the university, I was in the city of Barcelona as a CEO of the Office of Economic Growth and also a CEO of 22 at the District of Innovation. And the mayor of our city asked me to develop all the strategy of the industrial legacy of the Winter Olympic Games of Barcelona. We were planning to have Winter Olympic Games. And I would say, oh, Olympic Games, Winter Olympic Games in Barcelona, this is a challenge. Because we don't have snow, we don't have, but, and ice. And I decided to put the challenges as a competitive advantage of our industry. And I was making a global call, in this case for green snow. I wanted to create snow or ice without with less water and less energy. The winner of one of the challenges that how to create for this hockey on ice was a company that was using no water, no energy, because they were creating a sophisticated plastic with some creams that they were simulating the ice. I was not expecting that. But if I don't open my challenge to the world, I cannot find a disruptive innovation. That's my message. Focus on challenges, not on solutions, on challenges. And if you clear open, and more than that, with the events like the Olympics, you take advantage of this kind of big event as a showtime and a showroom for the solutions is a good experience.
Thank you, Josep. I think you raised also, you triggered the curiosity of Paris, and he has something to share on that. Please.
I would like also to answer with an example of the Google challenge for the greenest building in New York, and how it really created an innovation ordered by a corporate RFP. So the challenge was to 10 big companies producing frames, to produce frames that will minimize the heating needs of the new Google building in New York to zero, and that the heating of this building, even the harsh winter of New York, should be done by the hot air from the computers. That was the challenge. Minimize also the lightning to catch up the biggest amount of light of sunshine, and many other challenges. So it gave 6 months order of coming up with the best solution. This involved a lot of R&D, and the companies worked with universities, developed the pilot. Google gave them 1 floor to apply in their new building in New York, to apply their application. And in 6 months, R&D teams worked together with Google engineers and RFP managers and the companies, and they came up to the solution that this company produced in Thessaloniki. Unfortunately, I don't have the frame. It's in a photo. It looks like science fiction, this frame. It has 15 patents on it, and that was created by a big company ordering a new supply. So this type of big corporates driven innovations, which actually didn't really make any, it was not a, Google didn't do it to win money over the heating bill to the state of New York. It was, they did it in order to improve their green footprint and their environmental friendly corporate behavior. That was it. So we see several times that big corporations, they really drive innovation, not even in their core businesses. The issue is how universities could really comply with short deadlines, and how research teams can comply with short deadlines. That was an activity that our science park was involved, because when the company came and asked who could really help, the science park had filtered the hundreds of the labs around the town. These labs also had other type of cooperations with German universities, with British universities. So all this channeling of networking was achieved very quickly through an institution such as the Science Park Technology Transfer and Management Company.
Thank you. Well, I think it would be redundant if I add more than they did. So let's see if there are any other questions, please.
Nina Anticic, Institute of Shipbuilding, Zagreb, Croatia. I loved all 3 presentations, especially because I detected a lot of customer perspective, especially in the first 2 presentations, which I especially appreciate. since I'm behavioral economist. I would say that open innovation concept very good can be applied in the developed economies, especially in the technologically developed industries. However, Croatia is not a very good example of such economy. On the contrary, we have a very large proportion of SMEs with very low absorptive capacity, which you mentioned, which is a concept not sufficiently explored in the field that we are now discussing. So my question would be, and by the way, I read some of your papers that you published previously, but my question would be, do you have any experience or ideas what policies to apply, to impose, to boost up the value of co-creation, which is lying somewhere in the cooperation of the academic sector, science parks, research and technology organizations, and industries in such an environment with low absorptive capacity? Thank you.
I would like to answer because this is a key question. This is not about big corporations. We know that big corporations, they have enough resources and then they can manage global innovation. But what about our SME companies? What about them? If they don't have talent and they don't have technology, it's very difficult to put the supercomputing center in front of them and ask them, what do you need? A website, but I can make supercomputing and big data. My solution for that is to join the best technology transfer method that we have in every university, is the entrepreneurs, technology-based entrepreneurs. We cannot bridge the technology to the market without a sophisticated machine, and the machine is entrepreneur. And we discovered that in the year 2001. We had at La Salle, Barcelona, we have more than 250 new startups created around our university. And it was the way to put in value the technology and the talent. Technology and talent. As somebody told before, the university has three functions: education, talent, research, technology, and knowledge to use. How to transfer. You can create a big project and so on, but believe me that the more effective way is stimulating our entrepreneurs, our students, PhD students, master students, and they have to create and to put the business idea contest and more ideas and help them to transfer the idea in a prototype. And second phase, connecting with the small and medium companies. We have several experiments to merge, to connect the entrepreneurs with the small and medium companies. Because the small and medium companies, perhaps they sell 20 million, 30 million euros. It's not big, but they have customers. And perhaps they sell in 10 countries. This is a journey that a startup needs 1 to 3 years. If you can join both sides, really you can do what I say, merge and acquisition. It's more about merge. It's about a strategic alliance. How can you join the best of a company of urban furniture with a technology-based company that is developing IT information in public space? If you join both, and this is one of our work, how can we join? How can we stimulate in both sides? More than that, how can we put also the challenge of the small and medium companies in connection with the startups? My vision is that if you join, it's a merge. You are not just transferring technology. You are transferring technology, people, and a new way of management. Because the problem of the small and medium companies is that they are not very innovative, and they have to put inside the companies a new way of management.
Before I pass the micro to Paris, I think that what you address is indeed a very big issue because it deals with some big concepts such as the gap between some economies and others, lagging behind in certain basic aspects. And the eternal question is, yes, but no matter how many things we do, we will always be behind because the others are also running. Well, there are solutions, there are ways to find shortcuts. Giuseppe Piquet was addressing one of them, but let me just mention this. In these type of situations, I am more than ever before convinced convinced that patience takes a very important role. You have to think sometimes in generational terms. And if I mention this is because, one, I think that here education strategically defined system of education is absolutely crucial. And second, there are some practical tools which we just saw 1 week ago in Moscow, where they are beginning to pay enormous importance to children, and they are defining a new concept which is children science parks, believe it or not. I'm not going to enter into that, but the key idea is that in order to let's say, circumvent that gap sooner, we need probably to pay attention to the youngest elements of our society and start addressing the education in a different way, which will stimulate the need of innovating and of creating since very early stages. And not only school system has a role to play here, companies have a role to play here, and science parks have a role to play here as well. Paris.
I think because also the question was about this region, and since we're in a macro-regional conference, we have to admit that if you take out a couple of countries like Austria or some parts of Italy and some parts of Greece, the ecosystem for innovation and especially the culture for entrepreneurship innovation is still weak. If we take the countries by country, in Romania there are just now 2 science park initiatives. In Bulgaria there was just one inaugurated recently. In Croatia there's no science park in place yet. There are initiatives, but nothing has been done. In Slovenia there is more progress. In Serbia there is at least one. And for the rest of the Western Balkans there are just some ideas. Not to mention accelerators, incubators, seed capital funds, business plan competitions, startup events, open coffees, and all this ecosystem that really boosts the innovation entrepreneurship, and in parallel also the other mechanisms like open labs and technopoles and so on and so on. So there is some kind of need of intervention. In the past, European Commission, and I'm working, I did my PhD actually before the 90s, almost within the European Commission with DG Energy. In the past, the European Commission was more interventionist. In 92, they decided that Greece needs a new science park, and they almost imposed that. The Commission imposed a new science park in Thessaloniki. And nobody of the politicians, the regional governors or the mayor had any idea what is a science park. But at that point, the intervention was done and was accepted. So you will do your highways, your roads, your schools, but okay, you have to do also a science park, and they accepted that. And that did a lot of good. It increased the competitiveness of the region, of the companies that are doing international products, thousands of employment, thousands of employees of postgraduate level are employed around the science park and the innovation zone. So today, the European Union is a bit more backstage in this effort of course, there is strategy, there is some framework of intervention, but tools that are needed usually have to come bottom up more easily. So it's a matter of, in every region, it's a matter of identifying the best stakeholders that would really drive the effort. You need people that are dedicated, they believe in the scope, and they will devote their lives. Because for these systems of the science parks, we know each other for dozens of years. For every science park and for every incubator and for every long-standing technopole mechanism, there are some people who have devoted 15, 20 years of their stamina, of their push towards the politicians, our decision makers, and so on, in order to achieve at the end the result that has to be achieved.
All right, I think we have time for one more question, if there happens to be one, and otherwise we'll conclude the session. session. We have one here, first row.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you all for bringing us all up to date with Science Park team. You did a great job. We learned a lot, especially about this new approach from Moscow. This is a fantastic idea to have open call for a certain challenge, and I think this seems like a very good approach. And I would especially like to thank you for giving us this experience from Greece, which is very helpful to understand how can actually something happen in area. I come from Serbia, and as you know, situation is not. So my question is actually for Paris, and I think I would ask him if Thessaloniki Science Park could take a role of maybe helping Western Balkans develop more science park approaches for development of the region?
Actually, IASP itself, together with Thessaloniki Science Park and Zone, has created an initiative in certain Western Balkan countries, Albania, Republic of Macedonia, and Kosovo, to present the idea of science park and A to Z for creating new science parks. So IASP has identified, and also IASP is supporting Bulgaria and Romania for the creation of new science parks. So it has identified, based on the geography, anthropogeography of institutions, research, and populations and countries, that there is a gap in this region. So IASP is playing centrally this role. It's not only the Park of Thessaloniki, it's using the Park of Thessaloniki as an example. It can be done here. It can be done in this region and be sold competitively in the US, not only in Europe. Yes, in Serbia we didn't do the presentation yet, but we have to do it. Thank you.
We need a local anchor.
Actually, there was a Ministry of Science and Technology, Professor Tomaset, almost 10 years ago. We tried to initiate something in Nice at the old factory of Technis, but it didn't work at that time, so... Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we conclude this session. I want to thank you all for your attention. Of course, I want to thank the organizers of Area Science Park for their invitation and our colleagues from JRC. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks a lot. Well, very quickly, really thanks to our speakers. You know who they are, where they are, and luckily the Commission is doing something now a bit more proactive. And I also appreciate that there's something positive we've done in Greece at least. And I just would like to tell you that we are going now to the same room where you had lunch yesterday. The lunch will be a little bit more sophisticated. And then we come back here at 1:30. So we can anticipate also. So 1:30 is going to be the time for reconvening.